If you're looking for ways to up your management skill set, better understand your team members, what motivates them, to better understand yourself, you're in the right place today here on the Up-Level Dairy podcast. In this episode, Dustin Wirt, site manager for Silver Streaks Dairy in Cottonwood, Minnesota, joins us to talk about the first stop for first-lactation cows that calve in Kansas and then make their way to Minnesota. Now, Dustin has a background as a dairy herd analyst and repro consultant before cutting his teeth managing dairies in Kansas, South Dakota, and Colorado, and joined the Silver Streak Group about 3 years ago. He tells us today about a tool that has not only helped him to further develop his own skill set, but also how he is incorporating the strengths-based leadership and management within his team of 20 employees to push their next level of performance, whether it's setting somatic cell count goals or covering the bunker in record time. Hear all this right here today on the Up-Level Dairy podcast. I'm your host, Peggy Copping, and I'm here to bring you the conversations that will up-level your skill set and your mindset so you can be a top performer in the dairy farming business. This episode is part of the High Performance Mindset series powered by NEDAP. NEDAP is future-proofing dairy farms by revolutionizing cowside care through technologies and activity monitoring, cow locating, milk metering, and identification. And make sure you listen all the way to the end of this episode for a bonus conversation. The NEDAP Power Play features Steve Pavelski, large herd specialist with NEDAP, talking about the latest advancements in dairy technology and large dairy management. Enjoy this episode with Dustin Wirt here on the Up-Level Dairy podcast.
So Cottonwood, we have all first lactation animals here. We're not the only site with first lactation animals, but we're the only dairy on the north end that has first lactation currently. So they freshen down in Kansas, and then that way when the animal does calve down in Kansas, we just keep the calf down there as well. We save that transportation, sending them down to Kansas. So that works very efficient that way. But then generally the animal ends up coming up to here when she's roughly 14, 20 days out. You want to keep them healthy, get them bred, get them pregnant right away. Keeping the animal alive, healthy, well fed. Just keep her rolling and get her to that second lactation is very crucial for the company.
So your dairy that you operate is a very important step in that cow's lifetime. Bringing her in, getting her off to the best start you can, and your ability to get her up to speed and bred back efficiently is really what sets her entire career up wherever she ends up after she leaves your dairy and goes on to the next step. What are some of the challenges that you run into with that group of young cows as they come into the dairy?
There's several things, I guess, whether it's from the facility site or these animals are on a 10, 11-hour ride from Kansas to get up here. Generally, when the animals first arrive, our first step is to get the animals into the parlor. Depending on timing, they might have to wait a little bit, but then we provide them food and water right after they get off the trailer. So getting the cows off the trailer, that's one step. Get them into the parlor, taken care of right away, get them milked, and then back into their pen, get them relaxed and eating, and little water, get them ready to relax some more. So that's a whole challenge itself. Usually it's nice to not work with them a whole lot that initial day, 2 days, sometimes 3 days, just get them calm down and back to normal. Obviously, our nutrition is going to be a lot different versus Kansas nutrition as well. There's always that changing period of nutrition for the animal on top of it. I have a very, very young group that I'm working with, and guys are very ambitious. They want to learn a whole lot, and so it's been very fun group to work with here at the dairy.
How many people are part of the team there at Cottonwood Dairy?
So I have 20 employees, 21. We have a janitor that works part-time as well, but we have 20 full-time employees. Each employee has 2 days off consecutively. They work 5 days, get 2 days off. We have a day shift and night shift. They're working 12 hours a day. We have 2 guys moving animals, 1 guy scraping, and then we have 3 guys working in the parlor. Then the guy moving the cows is also in charge of pushing up feed after he gets cows sorted for the next 10-15 minutes, and he runs, pushes feed up quick, and then any time left, he jumps in and helps in the parlor. Then I have two herdsmen. We have a lead herdsman, an assistant herdsman, and the lead herdsman is the supervisor for the site as well. So he helps overwatch the guys in the parlor and scraping and all that. So he really focuses on make sure everything's getting done properly inside the parlor and out in the barns. Then we have a sand coordinator. We have one main guy and a relief sand guy as well. We have a mechanic and a feeder. The mechanic is the relief feeder as well. A lot of my guys can do a lot of different things.
So you have a good team and they're cross-trained to be able to pitch in as needed. And when you really think about the team that you have and your skills that you've been able to develop as not just, first of all, a cow guy, but now a manager of people and a very critical group of cows, it's a lot of moving parts and pieces to put together. What has helped you grow and develop in your ability to be able to not just be a really great cow person, but a high level manager of a team?
It's been great working for Silver Streak Dairies because they've really focused on getting us managers the tools we need to be successful. And so we work with Christy Pagel, leading Edge Consulting, a little bit. So Christy's been a great tool to have, and I've kind of taken a lot from what she's given me and bringing that to my team as well. We work with GPS Nutrition, and they have conferences throughout the year, and our nutritionists are very informative, and they have a lot of good ideas. And so we get surrounded just by about anything you want to be successful at each site. So it's been great. We also go through various meetings throughout the year. And as our sites are spread out, site managers don't see each other a whole lot. We may talk to each other once, twice a week on the phone or something, but we don't see each other very often. So once a year, we always get together and go through what's coming up the next year and everything, and kind of keep us informed how all the company is moving forward.
Yeah, so a lot of really great support that you're able to have access to through what the company is providing, also through some of the resources like GPS, as you mentioned. And you mentioned Christy Pagel, dear friend of mine. She's been a guest here on Up Level Dairy Podcast in the past as well. Christy had brought something to the managers and that management leadership team at Silver Streak. It was the Strengths Finder, the Clifton Strengths. That was something that really stuck with you, wasn't it?
Through the years, I've taken a lot of different, I think maybe not everyone, but a fair amount of people can relate to the DISC test. And so this is the Clifton Strengths Finder is something similar. It's not the same, but breaks down everything into 4 categories, which kind of the DISC assessment also does. But this goes one step further, where it breaks you down into categories, but then it pulls out your top strength from those categories. And so it's been a really great tool. You start off taking a 30-40 minute quiz. I suppose it's more of a quiz than a test because you're not prepared for it. So
And there's no right answer or wrong answer, right?
there is no right or wrong, exactly. So it's definitely a quiz. And then it breaks down into 4 categories. You have executing, strategic thinking, relationship building, and influencing. It originally just opens the first 5 strengths that you have, the top 5. You can purchase a package and they'll unlock all 34 strengths as well, which I ended up doing because I needed to know a little bit more. So,
What did you find out about yourself? What were your top 5 strengths?
so my top 5 was futuristic, competition, achiever, input, and restorative was the 5th one. So with that, being futuristic, kind of think of the future. And then competition, I like to measure my success versus other people's success, which makes being in my position interesting. Being an achiever, I just like to work hard and sit still, just being busy, productive, and all that. And having strength as an input, I like to collect ideas and archive them. And if I find something out, I like to share information as well. I like to keep my employees engaged. And so usually if I find something out, they also know about it as well. So it's been great. Then the last one is restorative, just being adaptable, and as problems arrive, just adapt to dealing with the problems, which is great in my position, I guess. So
That adaptability and problem solving and adaptability. Is that like the theme of every day?
maybe not every day. It's been pretty calm. I need to knock on some wood because it's been pretty calm here lately. But I know when I first started and GPS was coming out, I'd be telling them, I'm like, oh, geez, this happened and this happened and this happened. And this is before I took the strength finder. And I'm like, well, I got this. They're like, are you not bothered by it? I'm like, it happens. And once you take the strength finder, you're like, it's just part of life. Something that comes up and take care of it.
Yeah, recapping these top 5 that you've shared, you talked about futuristic, achiever, competition, input, and restorative. When you think about your role as a manager, working with people, working with cows, do these strengths come into play every single day in your ability to think about the bigger picture, to have areas that you focus on and can go after to measure the performance of the cows and the dairy in your team? A little bit of a competitive atmosphere, being able to do that with other dairies that are part of the cohort at Silver Streak. Does that all play out every day for you?
It does immensely, especially a competition. My sister-in-law, she's part of the group as well. After we were all looking at our strengths, she's like, yeah, Dustin's definitely competition. We have get-togethers and play volleyball or board games or something. I'm usually like pretty adamant about, winning or whatnot. But just as the dairy also, each month we go through our KPIs and everything with that, especially for me being first lactation. I have the younger animals, and so theoretically we should have some of the better numbers, right? I always try to make sure that my group is also staying on top of getting the best results that we can, just to stay ahead of the other farms. If we start these cows out really great, by second lactation, we should have really great cows as well. Right now, my dairy, I guess, we're working on a mission statement. And so I've been going through everyone's results, and everyone keeps telling me goals and expectations. That's something that I've done for my employees here, is just kind of setting goals, whether it's our breeding goals or quality goals with the milk, our time in the parlor, hitting our goals for getting cows in and out of the parlor. Guys know I have set many goals since I've been here of this is what we need to hit for expectations, and they've definitely achieved it on top of it as well.
So I want to get to what some of those goals were in just a moment, Dustin, but I want to back up for just a second because you've talked about how this has brought out your own awareness of what motivates you and drives you as a manager, and being more self-aware of that in your role. You've also taken this StrengthsFinder tool and you brought it to your team. What's that been like?
It's been really good. The great thing with Strength Finder is that they can put it in Spanish for us. A lot of my employees don't speak or read English, so having that in the Spanish form is tremendous for them. And we have an HR coordinator, and she will come down and help them take the test. She just reads it, kind of helps explain the question a little bit. That way they can answer the question as quickly as possible, because it is a timed quiz as well. Strength Finder wants your initial response. They don't want you to sit there and think about it. They want you, this is what it is, and keep you moving forward. So with that, it is a bit of a challenge for the guys. I know I've gotten feedback. They wish they could get a little bit more time with the questions. But yeah, it's been great for my team. It's made me aware of certain circumstances. I always remember this one example. I had taken the Strength Finder quiz, but my employee hasn't. and he's my feeder right now. And we were talking about something. I can't remember exactly what the circumstance was, but I was talking to him about it. And I'm like, well, when we move forward, this is what we're going to do. He just kept relating to what had happened. He's like, well, I did this wrong, and then this happened, and this happened. And I'm like, right, but moving forward, this is what we're going to do. And then once he took the test, found out he was contact. And so he always looked at the past versus I was looking at the future always. And so, that helped explain quite a bit of where he was thinking versus what I was thinking. And so I've had not all my employees, but I call them my core six. That'd be my 2 herdsmen, my sand guy, mechanic, and the assistant sand guy. So all those 6 guys have taken the quiz. So it's been interesting to kind of see also what kind of guys I'm bringing to my team. I think it's interesting because our company as a whole has taken, like all the managers and managing partners have taken the test as well. And it was very interesting. At one point, there was 4 dairies that were called the United groups. And out of all those managers on the United side, Stephen Landwehr has selected all of us were achievers, which was just very interesting how he handpicked us to be managers and how we all hit achiever. And he was also achiever himself. And so I've been kind of playing with that a little bit, looking at the guys that I'm selecting. I don't have the selection that Stephen has by any means, but trying to figure out those achievers to keep stuff moving and get everything done.
That's cool what you just shared about the dynamics of the bigger team that's part of Silver Streak Dairies, but then also your individual team there. So, what else have you learned about your core 6 team members? What else have you discovered or uncovered about them, or even showed them that maybe they didn't realize about themselves?
It's very interesting because the feedback that I've had from them is that they feel like their results are very true and accurate. Like they're like, oh yeah, this makes sense. My feeder, he had maybe one strength where he was kind of like, I don't know about this one or whatnot. And so we have a staff meeting every week as well. And so we don't always bring the strength finders back out, but I'd say once a month we do kind of go back through and keep everyone fresh on it, having them keep understanding their strengths and how we can utilize their strengths to help the team out better. And my supervisor, he does have a couple items in relationship building and influencing, which is great because it's going to help build our guys in the parlor, help build a little trust with them and respect that way. So it's just kind of finding those right tools, I guess, to make everything click together.
And putting the right people in the right places, right? Like, as you just said with your supervisor, those skills that he has on the relationship side, the relational side, influence side, how critical is that for keeping the team feeling like they are part of a team? So let's lay all these pieces together. Some of the unique challenges that you face every day, you and your team, of just working with a really critical group of cows coming in, and how important every step of the process is to get them off to the right start. So we talked about that piece of the puzzle. And now we talked about this other piece of the puzzle, and that's really being able to tap into the strengths that you have as a manager and that your team members have, and being able to recognize that and utilize those things for this bigger picture of achieving goals and being able to hit the marks that you want to hit, especially when it comes to repro, an area that you're really passionate about. Is there an example that comes to mind of when you've really been able to leverage your team, their strengths, and do it in such a way that you've hit a goal that you wanted to hit?
There clearly has, because through the years of Cottonwood, we were able to hit our goal pretty quickly. We initially had set up our goal of, like, ceramic cell count. Our initial goal was set to 100. We didn't enforce that right away. However, I'd say within 8 months or so, we started, this is our goal. And then within a year, we had finally achieved 3 months straight of holding the 100 somatic cell count under 100. And then, so the next thing was, well, we've done this 3 months in a row. Let's go one step further yet. So then we went into setting a new goal for 85. It's been a little harder, I guess, to hold our 85 somatic cell count, but the guys responded, and I'd say the first few months we were able to hold under 85. The winter time hit, and then we went up a little bit, somatic cell count. But just enforcing our goals with my competitive edge is just kind of keep pushing these guys to do better. And I always tell my guys we can always do a little bit better. Even silage season, we just got done covering our pile, and my supervisor, we get all done, and he's like, "Oh, that was pretty good. We went through this pretty quick." I'm like, "Could have done a little bit better." I don't know if it's just that competitive edge.
Did you time how long it took?
So we do keep track of time because we always know what time we're starting and roughly what time we're getting done. Our goal is 45 minutes for one sheet of plastic. And so we ended up this silage season, we had 5 sheets that we put on. And so we did one in the morning and the other 4 in the afternoon. We split up the groups where I think for an hour, 2 hours, we had both shifts helping. But otherwise, one shift started with the core 6, and then we got all but one sheet done, and then the day shift helped with core 6 towards the last part of the pile. We keep track of timing and all that, and so we didn't quite hit 45 minutes per sheet, but we were close. But
And you're going to hit it next year, right? So you have this super competitive and achiever strengths that have come out in your strengths finder. But as you talk about your supervisor, his are more on the relationship side. Does that balance each other with the two of you having these strengths identified in different areas?
absolutely, because he is very charismatic. He has his own supervisor meeting that he goes to as well. They were selecting their managers, and he told me that I was a charismatic manager. I'm like, are you sure about that? I do have it in me, but it's not one of my top 5. But he definitely is. The guys have responded to him immensely. So he's been supervisor for roughly about 5 months now. We had a previous supervisor, and he was more similar to me, which was probably not a good thing. He didn't have competition in his top 5, but I bet it was probably top 10. He was up there as well. Just comparing the 2 supervisors that I've had since I've been here, the guys have responded more with him, just with his skill set of being very charismatic with the employees. There's one strength finder in there that's like harmony, and it's not in his top 5, but I bet it's probably close to his top 10.
So he's the one that gets people rallied, excited, and engaged. And that plays right into the relationship that you and him have of you saying, okay, these are our goals and we got to get everybody on board. How cool is that? The silage covering example is fantastic. This is neat to hear how you've taken what you've learned and you've taken it upon yourself to say, how can I use this for my team and to help them be able to bring out and see their own strengths? And speak for a minute, if you would, Dustin, about what it's been like from a team perspective when you have shown these people what their strengths are. You've recognized what they're good at. What value does that bring?
I think it brings a lot to the guys. They really enjoy like receiving respect. And that's something that we kind of do focus on, is treating everyone equally and showing them respect and not pinpointing. I'm generally one of the first ones to admit I make mistakes too. Everyone's human. We make mistakes sometimes. I think it's just something that they always look for because they always feel good about themselves generally. When they are critiqued in a negative way, it kind of brings down their self-esteem quite a bit, and then they lose a little self-confidence. If you're able to bring something positive to them, I think that goes a very long ways, and it just kind of helps building them up from there after that.
When you reintroduce the results and things you found with your team, I know you said sometimes you'll reflect on it at meetings, but how do you continue to reinforce the lessons, the takeaways, and your team's strengths? You know, you can take assessments all day long, but until you apply them, what are they worth? So how do you make it actively part of what you do?
Well, generally, as I'm working with them throughout the week, I don't always do it, but there's times where if we're having a conversation, I'll bring up one of their strengths, and we pull it back once a month for sure, what our strengths were and everything. But we'll talk about it, not at a sit down or anything, but just as we're out and about. We also work on one other great tool that Chrissy Pagel has used in the past was 5 forms of communication. And I think that's kind of been a very big one for us as well, kind of going with critiquing everyone's verbal, nonverbal, visual, listening. There's one more, and written. That was the last one. So that's probably a little bit more of a focus, especially the last few months. I started working with the guys on this a year and a half ago now. They rate themselves with their team that they're part of. Some guys really don't have a team other than maybe their relief partner. And then I have them rate their communication with myself, just kind of keep them on their toes and make sure they're still communicating to me well enough as well. So that's been really big as well. And what we're doing is keeping communication alive throughout our team here.
So you're taking advantage of the tools that have been put in front of you and you're taking them and running so that you can maximize some of your own strengths, achieving and competing every day on the dairy and bringing the team along with you. Very cool, Dustin. Thanks for sharing these stories and these tools. And I'll make sure that I put some links in the show notes as well so that other people that would like more information about the Clifton Strengths Finder and that assessment or 5 forms of communication or some of the things that Christy Pagel does. As you mentioned, Christy Pagel with Leading Edge Consulting, that's worked with your team quite a bit. Also a dear friend of mine too, and does some fantastic things. So very cool, Dustin. Thank you for sharing these stories today. In true fashion, like you talked about with Strengths Finder, where you have to answer the questions quickly, we're going to wrap up our conversation with my up level 5 questions, and we're going to knock them out. Dustin, question number 1 that I have for you: what does success look like to you?
To me, I'd say success looks pretty much happiness would be kind of my opinion. You can have all the coolest things in the world, but if you're not happy, I was thinking just being at home, doing what you're doing every day, being happy, everyone around you, which is kind of tricky to do, but everyone around you being happy as well. I really focus on just making sure like neighbors are happy with everything that we're doing, whether it's at the dairy or at my home. Me and my wife have a little hobby farm that we custom raise 20 calves at a time. And so we sell them to a neighbor. And so I got to keep him happy as well.
This is your restorative coming out.
Right, exactly.
Number 2, in 3 words, how do you want to show up each day?
Prepared, just thinking refreshed, maybe. Refreshed is always good. Refreshed and humble, maybe.
That's awesome. Prepared, refreshed, and humble. Who are the thought leaders that you follow?
My grandpa was a big influencer to me. I remember when I was younger, maybe when I was 12, 13 or so, and then I was walking around with hands in the pocket, and my grandpa's like, "You don't look busy if your hands are in your pocket." So I wonder if that's where my achiever came from. So that was something that just being humble like my grandpa's very humble. He was a big leader for me, and just working with this group as well. There's so many great leaders that we have on our team, from all the management partners on the way down. A lot of my colleagues are very good people as well. One of our other sites, I know last I talked with him, they went 9 months without replacing an employee. And so he's kind of setting the goal for us, setting a standard for employee replacement, keeping things going well and keeping everyone happy.
You have people that are in your circle that help you raise your own level for competition. I love that. Okay, words you live by. What are the words you live by?
Every day is a new day. I always start the morning before anyone even talks to me, like any of my employees. I always tell them good morning, and then we can take care of business after that. But we don't talk until we say good morning.
The every day is a new day thing, I'm calling that part of your futuristic strength. right? You said it before. Your feeder that was looks back, but you're looking forward. Every day is a new day, and you've learned how to start that off on the right foot for you and your team. Last question that I have for you, Dustin. I'm excited to hear what this one looks like. What is your next up level? Something personally, professionally that you're looking to take to the next level in your life?
Oh, it's a tough one. For me, it's just continuing to get better, becoming more knowledgeable. The industry we're in is always changing. It's something new, trying to keep up with trends and how to be more sustainable. I think that's a big thing. Our group as a whole is trying to become more sustainable. Personally, we're remodeling our house, so that's kind of the ordeal itself. And so
Restorative at its finest.
we've been trying to find someone to do the work for us. I do a fair amount of plumbing, but a bathtub was something new for me. But we got it done. This summer has been very long with hailage and our wet season. It was very time consuming. I just need to spend more time, get back on track, spend more time with wife, kids, and try to get back in good life. So, yeah.
The balance of work and family, right? And home. Aw, well, great, Dustin. It's been so fun to visit with you today and learn more about you and what you're doing and how you are pouring into your team and helping them become their best selves through the work that you've been doing with them and showing them what's possible for you guys to achieve together. Thanks for jumping on with me today on the Uplevel Dairy podcast.
Thanks for having me.
This episode is part of the High Performance Mindset series powered by NEDAP. NEDAP is future-proofing dairy farms by revolutionizing cow-side care through technologies in activity monitoring, cow locating, milk metering, and identification. Joining us today for this NEDAP Power Play is Steve Pavelski. Steve is a large herd specialist from NEDAP with a decade of experience introducing and scaling up activity monitoring technologies throughout the U.S. market. He has a vast experience managing cows, including early in his career managing a 10,000 cow dairy in California. And Steve, welcome to the Uplevel Dairy podcast and the special NEDAP Power Play today.
Peggy, it's really exciting for me to be here. I listen to the Up Level podcast pretty regular, so it's a little surreal for a little farm kid like me to be part of your program. So it's really exciting.
Well, this is great because we're just two little farm kids that get to have a chat today. But you have some pretty vast experience, Steve, that has brought you into the role that you are in with NEDAP. As I mentioned, you are a dairy manager yourself and you're a cow guy. And your transition over here to the NEDAP team really came because you recognized that this was a company that was positioned to be a part of offering technology and solutions for large dairies, of which you had experience with yourself.
hmm
Tell me a little bit about what that means to you.
Yeah, so coming to NEDAP for me, I get really excited about dairy monitoring. It's one of those things where when you're a little kid, nobody dreamed of working with dairy monitoring when they grew up, right? But for me, it's something that I do get really excited about. We can really change the way that dairies operate on a regular basis. And coming to NEDAP for me was a little bit of a no brainer. I mean, they're a company that's very focused. The livestock division for NEDAP, I mean, that's basically what they're focused on is dairy monitoring. And then the tools that they're bringing to the market between the new cloud platform, NEDAP Now, the Smart Sort, and then just continued innovation in the dairy monitoring space. I think that we're really, really positioned well for the future. And it honestly, it's very exciting times to be at NEDAP.
So, Steve, you have seen the evolution of the dairy industry over your career in this business. And one of the things that you see, and all of us are seeing, is that dairies are growing, scaling, and now managing multiple sites in different locations.
Yeah.
And that really drives this need for a system and software that has a cloud-based platform. So, what have you seen in that regard? And what are the things that make that possible?
Yeah, so NEDAP Now, we're uniquely positioned for these very large farms that are, several sites across several states, all that kind of stuff to bring all that information into one platform. We have many users that they talk about how convenient it makes when we put everything in one spot. So you can compare site to site. You can see all the sites wherever you are on the planet. So from a management standpoint, it's really hard as these dairies continue to grow and they add more and more sites to be able to kind of level set and have a clear understanding of what's happening at all those sites is really difficult from a management team standpoint. So we put it all in one spot and make it really easy to manage those day-to-day tasks.
Steve, that was actually something that came up when I had sat down with Chris Seidel at Pagels Ponderosa for an interview on this podcast a few months back. And so, any of our listeners that want to gain a little bit more insight into that multi site approach and how that's working with Pagels and their multiple dairies that are part of Pagel family businesses can head back to that episode to get some of those details of how it's actually working on the farm level. But there's another technology that's been really exciting and is gaining traction within NEDAP and the customers that you serve, and that is a new sort gate.
Yep.
Talk a little bit about this technology and how it fits into a broader ecosystem of technologies on dairies.
So the smart sort from NEDAP has really been kind of a too good to be true kind of story. And honestly, when I first looked at the sort gate, I kind of got scared of it. It's a very simplistic gate. There's no sensors other than an ID and a moving gate, right? That's all there is. And the sort accuracy that we're gaining. And then again, you can reference the guy from the company telling you how great it is, or a guy that uses it every day, what means a little bit more. And so the success that we've had with that gate right out of the box, right? We set it up so the gate comes put together like there's you essentially got to bolt it to the ground. That's the only thing you're going to do when it shows up at the dairy. And the success right out of the box we've seen on many sites across the country now. We've put it in some pretty difficult spots, places that I really was kind of nervous about. And every time out of the box, it sorted at a really high rate. So combine that with the luxuries we have with customizability and integration through NEDAP now, there's really no limit from a management demand that we can put on NEDAP at this point.
So some pretty exciting things coming into fruition here with that sort gate and the ability to be able to tie in the cow side monitoring, the technology, the data, and to make that work for dairy managers and the people working on dairies to really streamline processes and efficiencies right out of the parlor and into whatever that cow's destination needs to be to get things done. And Steve, speaking of activity monitoring, we're seeing more and more dairies going this direction. But I'm curious for you, because you have a lot of experience working with large dairies in this regard. What do you see as the future of activity monitoring on large dairy farms and the adoption of that? What's the pace? What's the landscape? What do you see in your crystal ball for the next few years?
So first, Peggy, I'd take a little bit of a step back, right? The dairy outlook in general, the dairy economy here over the next couple of years is going to be pretty fun, right? I mean, if you're involved in the dairy business, the next few years look exciting. So obviously, with a little bit more income at the farm gate level, people get to look at different things and how can they improve their operations, all that kind of stuff. So obviously, monitoring is a big step for a lot of those farms. But I think back to my experience on the dairy, right? As dairies grow, right, that one-to-one contact with cows, it gets harder and harder to have. And the other side of that story is the number of really talented cow people out there gets smaller by the day, right? All these kids that grew up on a 50 cow dairy and then went to work for somebody that milked more cows, that's not happening as much anymore. And so finding those really talented cow people, it's really hard. And so that's really where monitoring fits in. I can tell you the heat and health status of every cow on that dairy, and I don't need to see her, right? So that's really where, as these dairies continue to grow, that's kind of the hole that we're filling in there. And from an ROI standpoint, it goes really fast. And honestly, the better or the higher level management that a farm has, typically your ROI is a little bit faster. And it's a little bit corny at this point, but I say it all the time, is that for me, I'm a cow guy. I like cows, right? So if I put a collar on that cow, I can make her life better. And then if I put a collar on that cow, the guy that's standing behind those cows or that has to work with those cows every day, I can make his life better because it's a lot easier to make a decision when you have more information. And the joy for NEDAP is, because we can do those things, we can make the dairy more money. And so it really kind of comes all together. And for the largest of the large dairies, the next few years, the appetite for technology on those farms is, it's really big at this point.
Great insight, Steve. And I think you brought up a really interesting point there too, as you shared that the skill set of people coming into the dairy industry, it has changed just as everything else has evolved and changed. And good, bad, or indifferent, it's changed. And so what I was hearing in your comments there is that the technology through activity monitoring, the data that's available is able to really help people that maybe didn't develop the innate cow sense that you did as a kid or that I did growing up on a 50 cow dairy. You're able to get them caught up to speed faster with that cow sense based on the data and based on real-time information that's coming right from the cow herself. So what an exciting and empowering tool for that next generation of dairy managers to be able to utilize to help them take their skill set to an entirely new level. Steve, thanks for jumping in with us on this NEAT App Power Play.